All right.
Balancing mom guilt. Yeah, we're talking about mom guilt and how we balance it in our lives, especially while we're running businesses. I'm here with my cousin Kat, and you are listening to Mom Chat.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Mom guilt. Ooh. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, so mom guilt, how you deal with that with businesses and family. Yeah. So let's jump right in. So it's normal. I just think mom guilt is totally normal. And I can't stand when people are like, oh, if you have mom guilt, you're not dealing with things. But in the relation to family and business, I think one of the first things that helped me start to decrease some of that guilt I was feeling around um, my business versus my family and that tug of war was creating boundaries. So, for instance, like when I was working from home, I always felt like, well, I should be doing insert however many chores or whatever. But then I was like, oh, wait, I need to be also doing my business. So I had a hard time creating that boundary between work time, family time, and knowing that when I was working, I was still contributing to the family, even though, and I think this is really tricky with entrepreneurship too, is sometimes you're not getting paid when you're on the clock. And coming from, if you will, corporate America, you're always getting paid. When you're at work, you're getting paid, you're expected to work. And even if you're working at home, you're on that 9 to 5 clock. Where it's like designated, those boundaries are already put in there for you. So it's a little easier, not perfect, to have that there. And so putting those boundaries like, nope, this is designated work time because the other times are family times. What about you with boundaries? What have you found?
Yeah, I was just thinking in general, like guilt overall, like, every time I would feel mom guilt and I would overcompensate to go make up for the mom guilt, I would ultimately also have business guilt because I was neglecting some of the business tasks. And, when it came to balancing things, I had to really become more strategic with like how I played my cards, right? So, oftentimes families, they spend the evening watching TV and they're just kind of hanging out. Well, I dedicate that time to market research. So while we're, hanging out watching TV, let me get two birds in one stone. But I also have better quality time with my kids, right? We go to the library, we go out on walks, and we go out and we spend time together. And I think sharing and being transparent with my children and knowing, hey, we're going to do something in an hour if you give me this hour to be in a meeting, really cut down a lot of the guilt, but it also put me in a better place with like not overcompensating, right? Because I felt like I was trying to make up for something all the time when there was nothing really to make up for. I wasn't doing anything wrong.
Right. And I love that because it really speaks to communicating what you need and creating that boundary and space. Not only for your kids, like, hey, we're going to do this, but I need this time now. And then we will do this. Or, I do the same thing with my kids. And when I started clearly communicating, sometimes me verbalizing, like, I'm going to work for the next hour and they're set up with whatever they need, it allows for me just to give that permission to just focus on work. I can always hear my kids if they're home and, but it's like that clear communication to yourself and understanding that it's like, this is a designated time for this, and over here is a designated time for that. And it definitely helps. I do find that it's being present with my kids has gotten better when I can kind of disconnect from work. Um, you know, get through snow days or like those type of things where it's like I'm focused on them and just trying to be like, I know and I have a scheduled time for work time to get certain tasks done that I'm gonna say overall helps dissipate some of that guilt there. What are other things that you do to kind of help keep that mom guilt at bay?
I mean, a lot of time it's just rolling with the punches, right? So like today I took a client call and my 2-year-old was like screaming in the background. And I had an 8-year-old who had just finished coloring her picture, and she had 2 hour delay. And she's like, "Look at my picture. Do you like my picture? Do you want to hang up my picture? Do you want my picture for your office? And what do you think about the orange in this picture?" And I'm like, but at some point I forgot that I'm on a call and everybody can hear that these kids are just outside the camera view going, "Hi, hi," and "What do you think of my picture?" And you just kind of roll with it. And at some point I was like, "I'm sorry, that's my 2-year-old and my 8-year-old." And you just kind of acknowledge them, acknowledge that you're on a work call, and you just marry the two. And you lead with it. It's part of my brand at this point.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. I'll never forget my kids when they were younger, much younger. And I train clients out of my house, all of that. And, my husband still travels for work, but when they were a little itty bitty, I'd say, Mom has a client in the morning, and I'll be in the gym, where I'm at. Majority of my clients are moms, but I'll never forget they would sometimes walk down and they'd be in their underwear and they just come in the gym and sit. And I'm like, well, this is happening. Like, it's like I'm a mom and this is, I think that inclusion with who you are, because you're not just a business person and that's it. You can't just turn off certain entities of who you are and the hats that you wear. And I think it is just rolling with those punches sometimes, that it's like, this is who I am and owning up to it. And, that I think is the blessing that we get as being entrepreneurs that, hey, it's not like, it's just everything who I am. Like, you get all of me when you are doing business with me. Yes, my family I'll keep separate, but there are going to be times where there's going to be that crossover, and that's what it is.
Right. Well, and to your initial point, we don't have traditional jobs. So, those unconventional hours really have a lot of overlap. And, those quote unquote income generating tasks sometimes often require having to wear both hats. And,
Yeah.
we also have those jobs like tonight where recording this video isn't necessarily an income generating task, but it's still very much a part of our evening and taking up time away from our children. And our kids are very aware that we're working right now, and it doesn't, minimize anything else that we have going on.
100%. And my 9-year-old threw a little mom guilt at me. He's like, Mommy, you have a call, you have meetings tonight, but I want to cuddle with you on the couch and spend time with you. And I'm like, oh, bud. I was like, there'll still be time afterwards before it's ready for bedtime. And it's just, to me, like, I was like, okay, we have time after, but we'll do this. It's not all. And he's like, okay, so it's not all night. Nope, not all night. Um, yeah, it is huge. It is accepting that there's not going to be a perfect cookie cutter, like this fits here, this fits there. And, the more I'm gonna say you get used to being that adaptable and rolling with the punches, like that's a pretty good thing. Like whatever those punches are, it's rolling with it and knowing that you are both and you can't separate them. I'll never forget, I'll tell this quick story. I was at a client session and the only time we could meet, when I was accommodating this client a little bit, I was at one of my kids' swim meets. And the time of that, like, I was like, this would be timed perfectly. They'll be done swimming so I can get on this call and like I can park myself a little bit further away from the pool. And thankfully it was outside. So it wasn't like super, super loud. No, they ran behind in the meet because we wound up having a like weather delay. So I'm on the call, my kid's in the starting blocks, and I'm like trying to listen to my client, and then I'm watching my kid. I start yelling in the middle of a coaching session, like cheering my kid on. And I was like, I am so sorry. I'm like literally here and I'm juggling both. And she was just cracking up how like I switched right into that mom mode and then switched right back into coaching her. And, but it is just that is, I guess, kind of what we choose. We get to be flexible, we get to meld both, and it's not always going to be like a perfect cookie cutter. This is work, this is home, and they don't mix.
Right, right. I think the main key takeaways this, time is just understanding like, it's normal to feel mom guilt. It's normal to feel guilt in general. I think it's just part of our genetic makeup. And then two, you really want to be transparent. As long as you're communicating and acknowledging the fact that you have dedicated some time to hang out with them, then people don't feel left out. And lastly, being willing to work with every situation and be adaptable, and understanding that, sometimes things don't just line up perfectly the way we plan to, and that's okay.
100%.